Hello everyone, Ian Wishart here again, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another marvellous episode of the Take A Pew podcast. Sitting alongside me, sporting his usual wetsuit and deerstalker hat, is Simon Clark.
Bonjour tout le monde. But hang on a minute, mate. I have a bone to pick with you.
Oh, what about the wetsuit and deerstalker thing?
No, that's fair enough. You said this is another marvellous episode.
Yeah, and?
Well, A, have we had any previous marvellous episodes?
Well, of course we have. They've all been marvellous.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give you that. But B, we haven't recorded this episode yet, so how do we know whether it's going to be marvellous or not?
Oh, I think we can be pretty confident because we have a marvellous guest. And even we can't be so awful that we counterbalance his marvellosity.
Marvellosity?
Well, whatever.
Well, who is this marvellous guest?
Ah, yes, right, the important bit. Our guest today is the third Kent Vicar to be on the show, and this time it is the Reverend Tim Saiet.
Tim Saiet.
Now, Tim has a very interesting background. He's been in the Royal Marines, he's been a ski instructor, he's been a doorman, he's been a professional magician, and somewhere along the way managed to squeeze in getting ordained.
Well, it certainly sounds like we've got a lot of ground to cover today then, mate.
Indeed we have. So, let's get on with it. This is the Take A Pew podcast with the Reverend Tim Saiet.
Tim Saiet.
Take a pew.
And here we are in the lovely Kentish village of Hildenborough, in between Tonbridge and Sevenoaks. And we are at St John's Church to meet its vicar, the Reverend Tim Saiet. Tim, thank you for having us, and please, take a pew.
Can I sit at the front?
Hi Tim, perhaps you could introduce yourself to our magnificent listeners.
Yes, my name's Tim Saiet. I'm the vicar of St John's Church in Hildenborough. I'm 57, married to Charlotte. I have 4 children. We have Sam, Maisie, Matilda and Megan.
Nice.
And I've been at this church 8 years, 3 months, 4 days. And anyway, I'm really enjoying it here. and I got ordained in 2006. And so here I am.
That's great. Now, we're looking forward to getting a glimpse into your life before the dog collar, and indeed life with the dog collar, and indeed life beyond the dog collar, as we navigate our way through all of our regular podcast features. What were you like at school? Fondest childhood memory? My favourite things? Perfect picnic 12 years from now? Is it true? Spiritual pearl of wisdom? And, say it quietly, Simon's random question.
We've got a lot of features, mate.
We have, mate. So we'd better crack on. Tim, where did the adventure that we like to call life start for you? Unlike most of our previous guests, I understand that it was not in a yurt in Uzbekistan.
It wasn't.
No.
Life started for me from a little fishing village that I wonder if your listeners will know. It's on the northwest of England. It's called Liverpool. It's a lovely place.
Right.
And so I was sort of born in Liverpool. My mum and dad, little story for you, mum and dad met at the Cavern Club. Dad was the manager for the Merseybeats. At the early days of the Beatles, that's where they met.
Wow.
And I've always asked them where and when I was conceived, but they've never told me. They told me where I was born, in Allerton, in Liverpool. And then very quickly we moved over to the Wirral, and parents were all in fabrics, uncles and dads, curtains. So even as a little boy, I used to go and visit someone's house, and the first thing I do is check whether they had curtains lined, fixed linings, loose linings, velvet, crushed velvet, and polycotton. Yeah.
Just a quick one, Everton or Liverpool fan?
Well, I support Arsenal, but I was a Liverpool fan as a kid.
Okay.
But there's a reason why I support Arsenal. I'll tell you that in a bit if you want.
Okay, no, sounds good.
We'll get on to that. Very good. Well, somewhere along that journey, you obviously went into some sort of education. So we have a question for you.
Yes.
And our question is...
What were you like at school? Were you a little bit geeky? Or were you a little bit freaky? Or were you a little bit cheeky? What were you like at school?
I was a little bit naughty. No, listen, I wasn't the brightest thing at school. To be honest, I didn't really get studying, and I met my first girlfriend, your first crush at 14. I think I struck it lucky that her mum was an art teacher, and she said to me, now, if you want to take out my daughter, you've got to study together. And the minute this young girl studied with me. I suddenly moved from bottom grade to middle grade, you know. So I only got 6 O-levels when I left school. But I owe it all to that art teacher who sort of said, you have to take out my daughter. So school's okay, and then I left school. I didn't do A-levels and joined the military at 17.
Okay, so just staying on the childhood curve, what did you do outside your lessons?
Well, believe it or not, my main thing was skateboarding and karate. And the reason why
At the same time?
Yeah, gosh.
Well, if I could.
Yeah.
The reason I got into it was my neighbour ran a karate club. His mum and dad said, why didn't you do it? And I was getting bullied at school. And to be honest, it helped me because I don't think I would have gotten the military without the 3 or 4 years of doing that. And it was local, and it taught me to have discipline and respect for my elders. It taught me to be teachable. It was a great sort of parental role because mum and dad got divorced when I was 9, and we moved from the Wirral with my mum to Wrexham in North Wales. And so not having a dad who, when he came, was a bit absent as well. You know, you see a lot of that, right? Have conversations with people about their parents. And I don't blame dad in a way, because when someone gets divorced, it can be quite hard if you're not the one with the children, whoever that is. And every time you see them, he said it hurts so much, he didn't want to come sometimes. So karate teacher filled the father role, and it really set me up for life, I think. And the skateboarding, I mean, you know, you look at what they're doing nowadays. I mean, we thought we were great if you could go off a step. But, I mean, if you look at what they're doing, it's just another world, isn't it? It's complete, you know. And I had a dog and a bike, you know, like most kids.
Did you have the what were they called, kryptonics? Those the coloured wheels that you could
and
get?
The wider wheels. You know, you see a cheap
cool.
skateboard. You know, we had the wild kryptonics, and you could do a bit more on them. They wouldn't stop if you hit a stone. Basically, yeah.
I feel we're heading down a horrible rabbit hole of skateboard
It's
nerdom
great.
already.
It's
What's going
brilliant.
on?
I love it.
It's great. But, well, it sounds like a little bit of fun up there on the northwest coast. But as we look back on that whole period, we have another question for you. And this question is...
What's your fondest childhood memory? What's your fondest of all your childhood memories? What's your fondest?
Oh, yes, Tim, what's your fondest childhood memory?
Fondest childhood memory was a guy called Great Uncle Bill. Now, this is a man that you see only once in your life. I only met him once. So often, sometimes when you're young, you might have a family pass through or visit, and you meet them, you love them, and you never see them again. Great Uncle Bill popped in and he did a magic trick on me. And it was a classic now, where you push a coin into someone's arm, but really you do it and you put it behind his ear with a bit of misdirection. But as a little boy, I couldn't work it out. I couldn't believe that this man could put a coin in my arm and then it would pop out of my ear or his ear. And for weeks I tried, and then I watched Uri Geller on TV and tried to bend the spoons. But Uncle Bill doing that trick, it brought wonder.
Brilliant, brilliant. So anyway, that was childhood. So did a few O-levels, and I think then you said you went straight into the military. So pick up the story from there.
Well, listen, I got diagnosed with ADHD 4 years ago. I'm 57. And I used to twitch and jump around, and I was a fidget, and I just put it down to me being a bit eccentric, or maybe from Liverpool or something. So I was bored, and we didn't have iPads and PlayStations. So I was really bored. I was in North Wales in Wrexham, lovely place. I was watching TV at home with my mum. Because I used to watch Blake 7. People might not remember that, but I loved it.
One for the teenagers.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with space anyway. And anyway, I was watching that, and then these guys were skiing in the Arctic, and I said, I want to join that. Mum said to me, they're the commandos, why don't you just join the army? So I went down to the recruiting station, and the guy said, the sergeant major looked at me, and he said, he said, we're not recruiting. So I went the month after, said, we're not recruiting. And every 2 weeks I kept going back, and in the end he said, right, do some press-ups and pull-ups. And I did them, and he says, right, keep coming back. So I kept coming back. Then about 4 months later, he started me through the process. And you do a 3-day potential recruit course where 12 of us joined and 3 of us got through. It's a weekend where they just try and be nice and then they're horrible to you to see how you respond. I got through that and then joined in November in 1982.
And that was straight into the Royal Marine Commandos.
As a junior Marine, yes.
Yeah.
It means you can't fight till you're 18. But listen, they don't treat you any different in training. And we were there for 3 weeks, and then we had our Christmas leave. And the sergeant said, normally what they do is, it's really funny. They normally say, I need a volunteer for something, and then I put my hand up and said, "What's it for, Sergeant?" You went, "Well, volunteer." So you learn to keep your mouth shut. He said, "Oh, it's for reading out at the carol service." And actually, I thought, "Oh, this is amazing. I'd like to do that." And I remember reading the scriptures in front of the whole commando training base, and something in my heart stirred. But I remember at that point as well watching those Jesus movies at Easter and thinking, I remember watching them and believing the stories in the films. Maybe that's why I'm reading this. Never thought anything else of it after that.
Wow, that echoed along for a while, I guess. So tell us about your adventures in the Marines. Because you went up north, even further up north, didn't you?
Well, you do your commando training. I did 36 weeks. 30 joined up, I think 7 passed out.
Was it brutal, physical side of it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
If you look at the brutal fitness, then you've got the brutal, stuff. They'll wake up and if they'll inspect you, and if they're not happy, everything you own will go out the window. And then you've got an inspection in 2 hours. So you've got to go and get it and iron it for inspection. And you'll fail all through the night. And your morale starts going down if it's not for the others. Imagine going out in the sea in a mud run, covered in mud, and you say you've got inspection in an hour and a half. They know you can't do it. So then they punish you for failing. They give you impossible tasks to see what it's like when you're under pressure. But later on, you might do a 6-mile run with full kit, fireman's lift 200 metres, round the assault course 3 or 4 times, up the 60-foot ropes with full kit and a weapon, round the assault course. And it's just non-stop physical endurance. In the beginning, I was terrified. I thought, what on earth have I just thought, I've just got to get each day through each day. But you get so fit in the end, you think they can't hurt me anymore. And you're mentally strong. By week 14, I thought, I can do this, Yeah.
It rings a bell because I went for quite a long walk yesterday. And I was quite tired at the end of it.
What's really interesting about that is, you look at guys and think, oh, they're fitter than me, they're stronger than me. But at the end of the day, it's what are you like after 4 days when you're exhausted and punished and you're asked to crawl through a stream, you're wet all night, you're woken in the middle of the night by an attack. Are you still smiling? And if you're not, they don't want you. You've got to be upbeat. And what gets you through is the humour, which is why I love humour, So I went from training, we did something with the Queen down at Stonehouse Barracks in inspection. And then up to 4-5 Commando. I mean, you don't know where you go and you get told. And I joined 4-5 Commando just after they come out of the Falklands. So you've got all these guys who are really tough guys. And I was what you call the sprog out of training. So they used to throw me out my bed every night for 3 months and set it on fire and all sorts of stuff.
As you do.
And then one night, I challenged them and it stopped. And then I was one of the guys. And then you work your way up through experience where I became one of the more senior Marines at the time. Went out to Norway. We were the Mountain Arctic Warfare training unit for the government, and the Marines protect all the nuclear bases, all the oil rigs, nuclear convoys, and there's a lot of stuff we do that people don't know about. And then at the time it was in the Cold War, so we were always going to Norway they'll be back there now, won't they? With all this stuff's going on there. But yeah, that's what we did, and it was freezing cold. 200 miles behind the Arctic Circle. It's so cold.
That's a long way. That's a long way north,
so
isn't
cold.
it? So you did that for a few years?
Yeah, I did it just under 6 years, and then I decided there was something in me pulling me out. Now I know what it was, but at the time it was like searching for something. So I got out and I used my experience as a skier. I did 7 winters as a professional skier in UK, Europe, and America. And then in the summer, I was doing mathematical tricks. I went to Jersey. I was on the door there and
security.
Yeah. Because I was non-combat instructor in the Marines as well, which means that you don't have to hurt people. You can tickle them and they go to sleep, and you just walk them out the door. Loving a shove out the door. And then I was doing mathematical card tricks, and I met a guy, another Marine, retired, said to me, I do sleight of hand, watch this. And I was fascinated with it. So he sent me to a world-class magician who for 3 months told me to get lost and go away. And then we agreed if I carried his bag and ironed his shirts and polished his shoes, I could learn. He taught me everything.
So persistence has played a part, hasn't it? Persistence at the recruitment office, persistent...
Let me just tell you, it's desperation, really, because what else could I do? And then he sent me to America, so I went out to America, studied with some of the great guys, went and performed at the Magic Castle in Hollywood, and then came back, and a guy called Marvin Berglass, who runs Marvin's Magic, he's got a big magic company, he said, please come to London, you should come to London. And then in the end, I was in London, his dad was the president of Magic Circle, David Berglass. I ended up becoming one of his top 3 go-to guys. So whenever they had a pressure event, like it could be a member of state come from a foreign government or someone hugely well-known, they wanted magicians who could do very high-level sleight of hand, because I used to practice 6 hours a day. Close-up, cards and coins. I got into pickpocketing, stage, what we call mentalism, mind reading, which is, it's all stagecraft, there's nothing in it. And then I just happened to get a break working at some charity stuff and ended up getting a manager and working with a lot of celebrities in London. Worked for Formula One. Then I was the magician at Arsenal for many years, every game. Now, every club in the country has magicians doing
Really?
close-up.
I'd never... Isn't that... That's
It's bizarre, huh?
I'd never
Arsenal,
have known
Chelsea, they're all. So I've worked at all the main hotels in London, you know, the Ritz, the Savoy, you know. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Great times. Now, you talked about little senses of something when you were reading at the Christmas services. But throughout all this period, I mean, I guess we're getting up to kind of 30-ish sort of thing now.
I think, yeah, 33, I became a Christian.
Right,
yeah,
so you weren't a Christian until then.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So, first of all, I noticed that I was partying a lot, clubbing it, looking for girls' gadgets and gold, I'd call it. And I realised that there was an emptiness. I didn't like being alone. I had no community. I'd lost the community from the military. I'd lost the community from skiing. So I had loneliness. And as much as I had the success and the money, I remember living with this guy who did work on the TV a lot, and he was earning a lot of money, and he was coming home. Sometimes he'd be crying. You know, he said, there's a hole in me. I can't fill it. And I said to him, you know, you're ruining it for me because I want to be famous. And then I started thinking, actually, it's just fake. Because most of the famous people I met, some pretty big Hollywood stars, once they'd got fame, they spent all their effort trying to keep it. I thought, I just can't do that anymore. So I remember, for some reason, I knocked on the church in Windsor, the military church. I didn't know what the Baptist method is. I didn't have a clue. Knocked on this church and said, look, have you got any courses, beginner courses? And he said, yeah. I said, have you got any, what do you get? You know, how much is free? Food? You get a meal. I thought, I'm in it. But what I didn't realise was I needed nurture and I needed love, and they provided that in abundance. And when you come out with all your potty ideas and potty theology, and they didn't want to argue with me. I'm used to having a row with people. They just sat and smiled at me and listened, and I'd never had that before. And for some reason, I sort of missed the Holy Spirit. They have a Holy Spirit there on the Alpha course. If you listen,
and this was an Alpha course, was
yeah,
it?
It was an Alpha course. And I thought, well, they had the video of the Alpha course in a church called Holy Trinity, Brompton. So I thought, I'm going to go there. So I drove down there, went in, and had a bit of a shock. Because first of all, it was the first church where I'd went in where people weren't looking to try and see how long it was going to take before they had to get out. And they were all happy, and then they were all had their eyes closed. They were singing to someone, like someone was actually listening. And I'm thinking, this is insane. These people actually believe this. They really believe there is a God and there's someone listening. I'd not experienced total, authentic worship before. And I remember feeling emotional, and this guy said to me, you've got all this stuff deep down in you that wants fixing and healing, and that's what God wants to do. And I'm like, well, I haven't made my mind up whether there is a God, but I sort of realised there was. Yeah. And I thought, well, have they drugged the tea? You know, why am I here? But then I went back week after week, and I did the Alpha course there, and I came alive. I went away. They have a Holy Spirit there. You go away. And they just said, look, you know, Tim, would you like to see the Holy Spirit? And I said, well, how it is to me is I say, look, God, if you're real, come on, man to man. You know, let's not faff about. Prove it. And I always think if you say that and God does exist, he will. And that's what happened. And for about 40 minutes, I was filled with such incredible love. and acceptance that you spend the rest of your Christian life trying to go back to that place. And I thought, there is a God. Now I know there's a God, you know. And it totally transformed my life. The interesting thing was, can I tell you a funny story? On that first weekend, so I'm not a Christian, remember. So most of my material was sexual innuendo and comedy, you know, like you see in the comedy store. I used to do the Edinburgh Festival and all that, you know. So I didn't know that was wrong. And then when I became a Christian, I thought I had to remove 90% of my pattern, not my material, and change my material. But at the time, I remember Nikki and Pippa saying, you know, would you do some magic stand-up on the Alpha weekend away? And I was like, are you sure you want me to do it? Yeah, we really want you to do it. And then when I did it, they said, that was horrific. That's terrible. And I was like, well, I did my best for you. I did my best. And then Nicky was like, oh, no, it's fine. He realised I just didn't have a clue. But luckily, God did. And it all, you know,
fantastic.
Turned around. Yeah.
Brilliant. And did you immediately change what you were doing in your life generally?
No. I kept doing it. And I went to a guy called Paul Cowley. And Paul Cowley's an amazing human being, amazing guy. Went to church a few years before me, ex-forces, who ended up running for Nikki and establishing Alpha for Forces, Alpha for prisons, caring for ex-offenders, and with a woman called, an amazing human being, Emmy Wilson. And so Paul said, well, look, you know, there's not much you can do except help on Alpha and come to prisons. So I used to do prison visits, and I hated it at first. I thought, I've spent all my life avoiding being locked up with people who want to fight. What on earth am I doing here? But I must admit, after a while, I just fell in love with these people because I realised that in different circumstances, that could have been me. And a lot of them had terrible upbringings, unbelievable trauma. They just had no role models. And I fell in love with that ministry. Did it on and off for 10 years as a volunteer.
Gosh, okay. And at some point, you bit the bullet, so to speak, and got ordained, obviously.
If it was as easy as biting the bullet in, it would be great. Again, you resist it. First of all, I thought Christianity wouldn't be for me because it would be boring and it would stop me from doing all the things I enjoy. But it's far from it. It's the opposite, isn't it? And it's this incredible journey of exploration. What happens is it's like a tipping point. Sometimes when God's pulling you to something, He takes the enjoyment out of what you're doing and gives you a greater enjoyment in the other thing you're doing. So in the end, it's an obvious change. The straight magic, the joy of it was going away, and the joy of serving as a volunteer kept growing. And in the end, it became obvious to others that maybe I should go full-time. And I'd felt a sense of calling to be ordained, but I couldn't imagine me being a vicar, this geezer. What they want is a mild-mannered man to do a mild-mannered sermon in a mild-mannered church, of which I'm not. But actually, they seem to think I was. So did loads of interviews and eventually ended up going to Wycliffe in Oxford.
Okay. And you worked with J. John at some point, didn't you?
So what happened with J. John, I went to see him and he must have thought this guy's an idiot. You know, he's a new Christian, a bit lippy. And he said,
J. John is a
J. John,
Christian communicator,
he's an unbelievably creative Christian communicator who communicates the Christian faith. You laugh your way into the kingdom of God. So he said to me, you're not ready, come back. Because I think he looks for 5 things and I had 2 out of the 5. You know, character, competence, calling.
Karate. Is that
karate, no.
No, that's a shame because you would have had that.
Yeah. That's a K. That's a K.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I've never been very good at spelling.
It's got to be a C.
Oh, right.
Anyway, so I ended up, just before I went to Wycliffe, Paul Cowley, who I'd volunteered for years, said, come on staff at HCB for a year, running Alpha for Forces with my other guy called Jerry. So it was too much of a draw not to do it. So I put the education back a year. So I did that, and then I was the tea boy because I was the new boy in the office. So I'd get the mail. I went over to get the mail, and on the way back, I banged into J. John, who was with a guy from Australia. And he looked at me and he said, oh, I remember you. You were the magician. And I thought, oh, here we go. And he said, you're going to work with me. God just told me you're going to work with me. Wow. I said, no, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to Wycliffe to be ordained. And then so he called me up and said, well, if you stay at HCB and do the HCB training course, you won't have as much access for me to train you. But at Wycliffe, you'll have more free time. So I did that. And then he spent 2 years training me there. And then 3 years when I was a curate. The end of that 5 years, he said, come and work full time for me. share the platform with me as a speaker. I'll speak, you illustrate it with a magical illustration. But the problem is all my magical tricks at the time were geared for adult cabaret, not for gospel. You've
So
got
how do you do a
potential.
gospel trick then?
Well, I'll tell you in a second.
Tell me,
He
yeah.
gave me a load of money to
Yeah.
rebuy stuff. So how do you do a gospel trick? So I give an example. So one of the illustrations I do is I show them an American $10 bill. And I say, what I found is when you become a follower of Jesus, and I'm not very good at it, but when you follow Jesus, you notice that there's a transformation. You become different, and you might not notice, but others do. And it's a bit like this. So I change it with my hands, I fold it and unfold it, and it turns into a £50 note. And then I say to the first one that claps gets the money, and all start cheering. It's the only way I get a clap nowadays. And then I say to them, what's interesting about the £50 note is that it's got the Queen promises to pay the bearer, and whenever I knock on the door, she ignores me. So if I crush that £50 note, it hasn't lost its value. If I call it stupid, fat, ugly, the words people have said to us, or I have said to myself, it does not change the currency or the value. And I said, that's interesting because it's given value not by me, the bearer, but by the government and the Queen. So if God created you and I say to them, if that's true, and he says he's the one that gives you value, then you, and I look at them and I point at them and I say, you have never lost your value in the eyes of God. So that's one of the illustrations I do.
Yeah, excellent.
Fantastic.
So you did curacy, and how long did you do? Because that varies.
It's 3 years in London, 4 years outside. So I did that and then did 3 years travelling and assistant director of J. John's Charity, Violent Trust. And then I met Charlotte when I was a curate at New Wine, and then we ended up getting married. And I thought, well, I always wanted a family, and I promised myself I'll be a present father, not like my dad at times. So I said to J. John, look, I'd like to go and lead a church and be a dad. And he was brilliant. He said, yeah, go and do it. And so 40 applicants applied here. And for some miracle, I got shortlisted. I think Charlotte being pregnant on the interview helped. And then, and I got the job.
Nice.
Yeah, amazing.
Nice. And that was 8 years ago? did you
8
say?
years, 2 months, 3 weeks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I remember. I should have remembered all the details. I apologise. So here we are in Hildenborough. It's a beautiful sunny morning as we sit here. I'm sure it always is in this part of Kent. Tell us a little bit about the parish.
So 5,000 in the parish, and the church is a healthy, flourishing church. What I realised was that parish life, your whole energy and function is in the parish. But you can do evangelism within that role. And I've just been asked I'm on the College of the Evangelists for the Archbishop of Canterbury. They call it an Archbishop's Evangelist. It sounds great, but there's a couple of hundred people on it nationally. Right. What I also realised is that churches, as well as human beings, get very set in their ways. And I don't think it's our fault. We don't realise we're set in our way. And sometimes when a new vicar comes in, you either do change initially in the beginning or later on. We call it a bit of shock and awe with love, But I thought, well, I'll just come and get to know everyone and see. But after a few years, I realised we had very few young people and lots of amazing members who were senior members, been here for years. And I thought, well, if we don't do something quite radical to bring these youngsters in, we'll be one of those other statistics. Sometimes it's like with family, you've got to make decisions that make you, not the nicest person. And sometimes you've got to change service times, which we did. And that was a challenge for people, but we got loads of young families and kids in now, having very few children. In fact, they were going to close the children's ministry down. Now we've got a full-time kids worker. And all that was doing was offering them an informal service where they could meet the Lord in a language they understand with a cup of tea and a croissant. Nothing magical about it. They've got to be able to see, they've got to be able to hear, and they've got to be warm. And I realised pews, I wriggle on a pew, it hurts my bum. So I sort of hinted maybe we should move the pews. We're halfway there. Put some comfy chairs in,
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping you're finding our Take A Pew particularly comfortable.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'd like it to Take A Pew with a cushion on it. Be nicer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be even better. So maybe croissants. Maybe that was one of your C's that you didn't have.
That was it, wasn't it?
J. John was
we'll
all in
it.
favour, but thought, but you haven't got any croissants, mate.
No, we should have croissants in there with that extra
that was
C.
Yeah, one of the
6 C's.
one of the solutions.
It's got to be an almond croissant for me.
Yes.
From Waitrose.
Right.
Not M&S.
Okay.
They are the best in the world.
You're surprisingly vehement about that opinion.
Literally, if you have an almond croissant from Harrods or Waitrose, there's nothing like them.
There we go. That's supermarket bakery
go.
products
That's
for you.
very
It's,
good,
not,
very
it's
good.
not the core theme of our podcast, so we'll move on. So what about outside work, Tim? What do you spend your time doing? Hobbies, interests?
Mountain biking. Can't do skiing anymore because there's no snow here. So I got into mountain biking a few years ago, and it helps the mental health because lockdown was a bit extreme, wasn't it, for all of us? I've got an e-mountain bike that I saved up for.
Nice.
Sold a few magic props, you know. They're not cheap magic props.
No, I'm
but
sure they're not. Yeah.
they're all handmade, you know. They're all handmade.
Oh, nice.
And from all over the world. So I sold a few of them, and I've got into it. And actually, you see the older guys on them because you can't keep up with these younger guys without them. But it means I go out cycling once or twice a week, and you can do 20 or 30 miles, no problem. And you're out for a few hours, beautiful outdoors. Sometimes I go out the bike, just sit in the woods and just reflect. And it helps with sermon writing, and it's really good to have a hobby, I think.
Yeah.
How fast does an e-mountain bike go then? If you
About
just...
100 miles an hour.
They're
isn't it?
limited
Really?
to the power on cuts off at 15 miles an hour.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's not...
I mean, I get overtaken by road bikers doing about 50 mile an hour. You know, these guys on these road bikes, they have these bigger cogs. You know, we only have one cog. So once your legs go at a certain speed, you can't go any faster. You look like one of those cartoon characters. you know.
Clown cycling.
It's just, you can't do it. So.
Perfect. And I think you mentioned at some point when we were chatting, you mentioned a bit of guitar.
Ooh. Well, that's...
I hesitate to mention it because I know Simon and Mark will go off on one completely.
Yeah, so what happened was Paul Cowley said to me, look, we're short of worship leaders for prison. Why don't you learn the guitar? I went, so I bought a guitar, and so I practiced, had some lessons, and I used to go in. I was so bad, they decided to put me behind the prisoners so I wouldn't see them laughing. So, then I got better, and in the end I started leading at HTB and stuff, but I don't really do it anymore.
Oh, right. So
because you can't, you've got to focus and make sure other people do the jobs.
Yeah.
That was for a season.
Oh, I'm pleased you're not that interested in it because I've already been subjected to the entire car journey with Simon and Mark talking about guitars, but there we go. Tim, that was a fascinating journey through a varied life thus far. So you'll be pleased to know that it's very nearly picnic time, which in turn, of course, means it's time for our little game of My Favourite Things.
My favorite things.
Yes, Tim, this is always a very simple game. We'll give you 5 categories, and you must have to tell us your favourite thing in each of those categories, except in one category where you need to give us 5 things, and another category where we give you a choice of 3 things.
Yeah, that's perfect. It couldn't be any easier, could it? Crystal clear. Anyway, our first category, Tim, is always your favourite book of the Bible.
That's a good question. By the way, the audience need to know why I said yes to coming on here, because I love your jingles.
Thank you
They
very
are
much.
quality. I love it. So when I'm hearing the jingle, I'm sort of dancing away. All right, favourite book in the Bible. There's so many to choose from.
66, I think, is the limit.
Is there? I don't know.
Well, it depends who you speak to. Maybe 73.
Apocrypha as well?
Yes.
I think it's got to be Romans, I think. It's like Paul doing... and these parties have these big annual conferences. It's like his annual conference speech, and he's on his way to Spain, I think it was. And he's writing to these guys. I mean, they're right in the heart of Rome. You can imagine what it's like, put one foot wrong, get punished. All these cults and all these other faiths and stuff, and he's really cheering them on and helping them. And there's so much in there for life. I mean, it's frustrating, isn't it? You read one line of the Bible, and that can be life-changing from one text, and you read this and you think, how does this guy have so much wisdom? Where does he, it's from God, but it's like life-changing, every other line. But Romans is, there's a few, but Romans definitely.
Okay.
Can I give you my second one?
Yes.
Song of Songs.
Oh, okay.
I wrote an essay on it, and I discovered some beauty in it I never knew was there. So Song of Songs.
Right.
Great.
Well, that has a strange relevance a bit later in the show, funnily
okay.
enough. So, very good. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. All right, next one for you is smell. Your favourite smell.
Tricky one, I think.
Yeah, it's a tricky
I
one.
think essential oils, when someone's going to give you a massage, or those oils are beautiful. They do relax you. I bought a candle for my wife, and as soon as I smell it, it makes you want to,
The third category this season is always your top 5 films. So it's in
yeah.
your top 5 films.
First one's The Robe, Richard Burton.
Okay.
So The Robe I love that film. I watched it early in my journey, where it's made up really, but he's a Roman senator, powerful, and he is there when Jesus gets crucified, and then they throw him the robe, and when it touches him, something happens, and it's this great story, but I love it.
Nice. Do you like that one, Simon? Because you're a massive Spartacus fan. Oh, is it, is it Spartacus or Ben-Hur?
Ben-Hur's my favourite.
Ben-Hur.
Yeah,
I
like Ben-Hur. Yeah, no, that would definitely be my second.
Oh, right. Okay.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's good.
Preemptive.
Good.
So are they all based in Rome, your favourite films?
I love the Roman films, but I think the other film was... Oh, it's a series. Is it Das Boot? Oh, that's a series, isn't it?
Okay, well, there was a film, Das
It was a
Boot.
film,
There
Das
was a
Boot. I
film,
think
yeah.
that. I love that film.
That submarine.
Yeah, I love submarine stuff, old military, naval history. Other film is... it was Mission to Mars, space films. I'm fascinated. See, I'm sort of stressed. When I read in the Bible, the 5 words it says in Genesis... Then he made the stars. I'm like, 5 words to describe the universe. I mean, it's like talking about the British downplaying. I mean, I watch Star Wars. I love Star Trek. You know, they have a Galaxy-class starship, but it can only go through a galaxy. And, you know, the more you travel, the bigger the universe is, and this is God made that. So I love the Star Wars film, and I love the early Star Trek ones. So, and then the 5th one, isn't it? Well, it's got to be, what's it called? Where he's a gladiator and he fights Caesar at the end in the arena.
Is it Gladiator?
Gladiator.
Film Gladiator.
Oh, right. Okay.
Hey,
Russell Crowe.
yeah, and because of that,
yeah.
I started doing voice trailer man in college. Have you heard voice trailer man? Because every time you hear a film, they have the man with the deep voice. And a guy called Don LaFontaine was the main guy in America, and he died. In a valley of pain, there came one podcast. Ian Wishart, and Ian and his merry men went to find other men and talk about Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's my favorite. I love doing the voice. My kids go, Daddy, don't do that voice anymore. Anyway.
That is fantastic.
So that's 5 films.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yes,
very, very good.
Interesting. Another quite eclectic sort of collection, isn't it? Very good.
It's a
Okay.
really good collection. Okay, try this one for size, Tim. Your favourite window.
What do you mean my favourite window?
Your favourite window.
It's another tricky one, I think.
I
isn't it?
think
Very
my
difficult. It's
favourite
tricky.
window is in our St John's Church in Hildon, above the altar. It's this massive single pane of glass, and when the light comes through, beautiful. It's of Jesus and the resurrection, and Jesus coming back, in a sense, a picture of him on his return. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Good answer.
That's
good answer.
brilliant.
So
Like
it's
that.
difficult one, that, mate. What's yours then? Let's get you back on this one.
I think, I don't know. Oh, that's a bit of a pain. Sorry. I would say probably a bay window is one of my favourite
Bay
windows.
window,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, just like the,
Yeah. Nice.
What about you?
Okay. Yeah, I've got no idea. So anyway, our 5th and final category is always multiple choice. I'll give you 3 possible answers. And you mentioned that you found the Alpha course very helpful, life-changing even. So we'd like to know your favourite Alpha. Now, 3 possible answers are the Italian sports car, the Alfa Romeo, the very important fodder crop, Alfa Fa, or Alfalfa.
Well, it's easy for you to say.
Anyway. Or thirdly, Alpha Betty Spaghetti.
So what is the middle one again?
So Alfa Romeo,
the
Alfalfa.
What is that?
It's a very important fodder crop.
You spend hours on your material writing this stuff. It's got to be the spaghetti with a bit of garlic.
Alpha Betty Spaghetti.
Yeah.
Alpha Betty Spaghetti.
Well,
yeah.
my daughter loves spaghetti. Little
Yeah.
Megan, she's 5. She'd eat a whole tin. It goes in a little tummy.
Nice.
She loves it. So it'd be
So
that.
you'd rather have a tin of Alpha Betty Spaghetti than an
I don't
Alfa
like
Romeo?
the Alfa Romeo. They used to be really quick, but remember in the olden days when I first bought my first car, which was a Ford Cortina GL 1.6, put
nice.
5 Marines in, it wouldn't go over 60. But the Alfa Romeos used to rust.
I was going to
Yeah,
say
they
they
do.
were
They're different
bad
now, but they're
tourist
not
ones.
my style. I like German cars.
Yeah, so a tin of Alpha Betty Spaghetti.
Can you still get alphabetic spaghetti?
I'm sure you can. Although, if a tin of that explodes, it could spell disaster.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
But anyway, a splendid collection of favourites there, Tim. Thank you. And that brings us hungrily to the point in the show where we ask you the question:
What would you pick in your perfect picnic if the picking were up to you? Would Would you be sticking in some finger-licking chicken? Or would you be silly and big Piccadilly? Tell us, what would you choose?
Yes, what would you pick in your perfect picnic? But before we open the hamper, Tim, where would you like to go for your perfect picnic?
I'd like to take my wife to Rome and have in it, we'd have Marks and Spencer's chicken breast with salad, and we'd have Marks and Spencer's desserts. And I like M&S.
Yes,
Nothing
but
but
I was just getting slightly
Only
concerned that
'cause
you're
there's-
sponsored by M&S.
No, there's a garage down the road. But the chicken, salad, the dressing would be nice in a little hamper.
Okay, so you'd go all the way to Rome, but you'd still have
Well,
an
we'd
M&S chicken breast from the garage up the road.
Well, you said picnic. I mean, I don't know what the shops are like in Rome, you know.
Okay,
I've sort
that's
of-
fair enough, yeah.
But we're in the world of fantasy, right?
We are.
Yeah.
It
It's
is
just
your
brought me
perfect
right
picnic.
back to reality.
So
there.
about in Rome, would you be sitting by the Trevi Fountain or something, or would you be in a
can't
nice
remember what that
little
is.
square?
Busy.
Too many people.
Just
No,
generally in
yeah.
Rome. Yeah.
Just generally in Rome.
But
middle
actually,
of the
now
Colosseum.
you say that, I went to Israel on a pilgrimage, and if the church on the Sermon on the Mount was rebuilt by Mussolini, Second World War, he paid for it. But actually, up on the hill there, that is actually the perfect place for a picnic because it looks down on Galilee. Actually, that's where I'd go.
Okay,
that's- yeah,
perfect.
on
Because it'd be
second
too
thoughts.
busy in Rome.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would
Too
be.
busy.
And you'd still have a M&S chicken breast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I took my wife up. We went to this place where you go for 5 days or 3 days, and it's like got swimming baths in it and a forest place. And so we're in this beautiful restaurant, and I looked at the desserts. There was £7. So I said to her, "What do you think?" And then this lady came and said, "Would you like dessert?" I said, "Actually, no, I've got me milk chocolate button dessert I bought for £1 from the garage." And my wife said, "He actually does like that better than anything on the menu." So I'd have one of those as well, I think.
Brilliant.
And that's really heavy for a dessert, £7, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
so I was going to say that. It's quite,
I hate to
yeah.
think how much it would cost as well.
Yeah, washed down with what? With a glass of
Oh,
wine?
it'd be
or
a
something?
nice bottle of white wine,
bottle of
yeah.
white,
Chardonnay.
And what are any other little tidbits and treats that your perfect picnic? There you are, gazing
we'd
down
have-
from the sun.
Yeah, we'd have pizza bread, olive oil, feta cheese and
Oh, right,
olives.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to
Nice.
book it. I'm going to book it.
Sounds like a perfect picnic, and we do hope that you get to enjoy such a picnic before too long, Tim. But back to the Saiet story. Well, we've looked over our shoulders and we've looked from side to side. It's time to look forward as we ask you...
12 years from now, where would you like to be? Working hard in a town, or chilling by the sea? 12 years from now, what would you like to be doing? Or would it mainly be the same? Or would you rather be canoeing for a summer?
Yes, Tim.
It sounds like George Formby, but that's you singing it. Isn't it?
is you
It's
singing
good though. I don't know. I'm leaning on a lamppost.
Very good. Very good.
Brilliant. Yes, Tim, what would you like us to be talking about if we were having this conversation with you 12 years
Me
from now?
being a full-time evangelist, doing gospel illustration, going around communicating faith in churches and spreading the good news. It might not be employed, but it would be speaking in retirement. And that gives you an opportunity to spread the gospel.
Brilliant.
That's great. And quite a definitive answer. That's great.
yeah,
Well done. So, well, we wish you every blessing wherever life may take you, Tim. And with that, we round the last bend and pull onto the final straight of the show, a stretch of track that is paved with intellectual excellence and spiritual inspiration.
Oh, yes, indeed. We hope that you will shortly grace us with your spiritual pearl of wisdom, Tim, but not before we enlist your help with another Bible dilemma that's come to our attention. And we call this part of the show...
Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
Yes, is it true? And this time we have a pretty straightforward question relating to the Bible. It concerns wise old King Solomon, son of the great King David, and of course connected with Song of Songs that we were just talking about. And the brilliant book of 1 Kings chapter 11 tells us that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So, is that true? Because I've been reflecting on that. And even ignoring the concubines, there are some practical considerations. For example, Jewish weddings and celebrations are famously quite grand affairs. And so you probably wouldn't want more than 2 in a day. And therefore, in having 700 wives, Solomon would have had to spend nearly an entire year doing nothing but getting married, not to mention having 700 stag nights. And then, of course, with a household of that size, there would have been significant logistical issues with, shall we say, the bathroom. But despite all that and many other family challenges, the Bible does assure us of Solomon's extreme polygamy. So, Reverend Tim Saiet.
Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
It is true that he had all those wives. I couldn't cope with it. I mean, I've got one amazing wife who tells me all sorts of things I don't know about myself and helps me become a better man. The thought of 700 of those, I don't know how he coped. I mean, he'd be a shadow of his former self. I mean, the stress, and trying to make them all feel loved. I mean, I just couldn't be...
It's amazing, isn't it?
Scary thought. I mean,
to me, it doesn't sound healthy, but I mean, that was the culture. I mean, it's just not.
It just can't. I mean, being a practical sort. So, I mean, I mentioned the bathroom problem, but I mean, if there was one bathroom in the house, then all the wives would have spent basically their entire life waiting to go to the loo.
Absolutely.
And actually, by my rough calculations, if they had like 5 minutes each, you would only be able to go in about every 2.5 days.
Which is why, being one of the richest men in the world, he had more than one bathroom. And what's interesting is people always, when I meet Christians who've got money, a few bob, they're always a bit coy about it.
Yeah,
but I say, some of these major Bible people, billionaires, like Job in his day, was very, very rich, and Solomon. God's not worried about the money; it's about how you behave with it, what your heart is like.
Absolutely.
It's about everybody being wealthy and successful.
You've turned that around brilliantly from a complete gibberish.
Well, it is. I mean, I think the reality is the history of that I think Solomon would be presented with wives by foreign dignitaries, and because he was so powerful, it was.
But I mean, part of me feels a bit sad because you've got Jesus later on talking about, one wife. And if you talk about the attention it takes for us just to keep a marriage healthy, you wouldn't exactly call them healthy marriages. No. And there must be a lot of vanity there. And yet here he's promoted in the Bible. He's a healthy man and wise man. But you'd need to be pretty wise to manage that sort of group.
And I think actually it was appealing to his vanity. And I think some of the foreign wives actually led him astray. I think that's what happened in the end, wasn't it?
Of course.
And so he got drawn away from the one God. And that was what caused his downfall.
And that's what happens when you have excess in anything, I think. Which is why the Bible says, give me enough. If I have too much, I won't keep coming to you and asking for help. So I think excess, you've got to be really wise with it.
So there's some actually quite big lessons. It started off with frivolity about lavatories.
Absolutely.
As ever, we get to some great, profound truths on the Take A Pew podcast.
I think that was one of the best ones, I think. It's fantastic.
With that, Tim, we would be delighted to recover some decorum by way of your spiritual pearl of wisdom.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Everyone listening will have their favourite scripture, right? So my favourite scripture is, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and always acknowledge God and he will make your path clear. From Proverbs 3:5-6. The problem that I'm meeting as a vicar is that, first of all, I've noticed in the churches that people can be going to church 30 years but still behave as if they're in their first year. So I think spiritual maturity has to be matched by emotional maturity, and discipleship is about having an honest assessment of your character and who you are. The problem is, if you rely on your own understanding, you won't grow, because God's understanding is far deeper than any of ours. So he's calling us to become more like Jesus. And that means that you mature and grow in your character and in your emotional life. So if you're firing at the hip, you're short-tempered, there's clearly something that's not matured. So some people can come to church and have a great Sunday. They go home, they read the Bible a little bit, they have a reading for the day. But yet when you look at their character, they're not living it as if they've been absolutely surrendered. And the only way to do that is to lean on God's understanding. And he will take you down rabbit holes and places you've never been. That will frighten you. You will understand. I say, we're not made for the shore. We're made for the open water. And God takes you in that boat away from the shore to mature you. And the only way to grow as a man or as a Christian or a woman, I think, is through loss and pain and suffering. Because then you suddenly become attracted to other people. And what we've been teaching here recently is that if you spend like half an hour in the morning doing your faith time, but nothing else through the day, so you get to 5 o'clock and you're just the most unlike a Christian you could be, because it's been 7 hours since this morning, or 10. What you need to be doing is chipping all through the day and journeying through your day as a spiritual person, so that you are God's gift to the world. It's not like God's gift in vanity. You're so close walking with Jesus, leaning on his understanding in every moment, that you become God's gift to everyone you meet. And that only comes by maturity, continual time in God's presence, learning about him, and allowing people to ask you questions and help you grow in your spiritual life. So the big thing for me at the moment is discipleship, what that means for people. Because a lot of people have gone to church, they know the stories in the Bible, but the application on their life is not evident in a lot of places, because they've not been given opportunities to be challenged to grow and mature. And a lot of people, it's hard doing that. We've just run a course called the Emotionally Healthy Discipleship course, Pete Cesaro's course. Life-changing. People said it was hard. Of course it is, because most of us carry trauma and pain. We self-medicate on our chosen form of medication. I meet people, they're not everyone you meet is a drug addict, a gambler, or an alcoholic. I struggle with addiction to chocolate. I love Cadbury's chocolate. We've got a shop next door, 4 flakes for £1. The wife says, buy milk. It's very hard to walk past it. I gobble 2 flakes by the time I got to the front door. Okay, they're mini flakes, but it doesn't matter. We are self-medicating in the church on things apart from Jesus. And part of that is if we get back on track and lean not on our own understanding of Christianity, but on his understanding, anything can happen. That's my pearl of wisdom.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Tim. Reminding us to be realistic and authentic and not flaky. And so we prepare.
Oh, that's good. I just got it. I just got it.
Took a while. And so we prepare to cross the finishing line of the show, albeit not quite yet, because we do need to subject you to
Simon's Random Question.
Simon, what is your random question for Tim?
Well, Reverend Tim Saiet, you've spoken of your amazing skills in winter sports. And so my random question for you is this. If you had to compete in one event in the Take A Pew podcast version of the Winter Olympics, which of these 2 events would it be? Would it be the 1,500 metres speed skating wearing only socks on your feet, or the downhill skiing giant slalom on a bicycle?
Downhill giant slalom on a bicycle.
Straight away.
All day long.
Straight answer.
All day long. Because it's fun. It's more fun. You've got momentum, you see. You've got gravity moving you. The other one, you have to do it all yourself.
It'd be horrific.
You'd have a heart attack at the end of that, wouldn't you? 57.
Have you ever
tried going down?
Have you ever cycled down a ski slope?
Only when it's not snow, in the summer. But the guys, they have this thing called the avalanche thing in France. Right. Where they do it at the top, then they do it on snow, then they go on to normal mountain stuff, and it's like a lot of people fall off. And I sort of said, I'll give it a go, and a few friends ran me up and said, no, you'll literally kill yourself. So I've decided not to.
I just imagine a bike would just plough into, so to speak, into the snow.
Because if you're doing it on a piste, it's hardened.
Yeah, the piste would be good.
Now, obviously, if you live in like Finland or Norway, you get studded tyres on your mountain bike.
But that's cheating.
But they don't have them. If it's hard packed snow, you can cycle on it, but you can't brake. Right. You've got to use your feet.
You'd probably get through the first gate, wouldn't you?
No, they don't have gates, and you're talking about slalom. Oh, that's
the giant slalom.
You'd have to go with your feet on the ground, I think.
Okay, so you don't want to. Yeah, you could. Yeah. Okay.
I think I now want to go and look for videos of people cycling down a ski slope.
Yeah, called Mega Avalanche.
Is it really?
It's
so it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought it?
Okay. Yeah.
So do they actually have speed skating in socks? Do they have that as well?
No. But again, I'm worried about your imagination. We need to get you some help.
I think there would be a great comedy value. I think it'd
be like one of those cartoons.
Well, let me tell you. I was accused of this. There was an article when I was in the Royal Navy ski team. Sozzled ski commando goes nude on piste. A Royal Marine skied down the mountain. It was on page 2 of the Sun. Sozzled ski commando skis down piste in just his ski boots and skis, And for years, everyone accused it being me, and it was not me. Right. I know who it was, but I'm not saying
it was a friend of mine.
It wasn't me. I would never do that.
Nice.
And as a man of God, I would deny it anyway.
Yeah. I was following closely behind in my underpants.
Very good. Well, I feel quite edified and informed and educated now. It's very good indeed. Yeah. But in any case, that was
Simon's Random Question.
Well, Simon, I'd like to say that you took us there into some really useful debate on winter sports, but that would clearly be inappropriate. Although I would really like to see both of those events, so I'm going to have to look them up. In any case, Tim, with that, we do indeed take the checkered flag at the end of this episode of the Take A Pew podcast. It's been a fascinating ride. Thank you for having us, and thank you for being on the show.
It's a delight, and thank you for teaching me that money isn't everything. And that was a joke I used to use when I used to do free gigs, But actually, we're doing it for the Lord. We love doing it, don't we? And you guys have driven up here on a Saturday, and it's great to see you. So well done. And I love the jingles. Keep the jingles. I'll listen to more.
Yeah, they're an important part of the show. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And dear listeners, thank you for joining us once again. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on social media if you can. We've got some big news coming very shortly concerning a live version of the show. Woohoo! So keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, it's Toodle Pip from me.
And Tatty Bye from me.
Join us again next time as we Take a Pew.
Take a pew.